Hey there, welcome back to Limabean Living. In today's video, I will be sharing all of the food that I prepped ahead of time in anticipation of my daughter's second birthday party. She loves rocks, so I tried my best to make sure everything I made fit the rock theme. So if you want ideas for your own rock party or just want some delicious recipes, keep watching. The first recipe we are going to prepare is a staple in our home. We call it toffee, but others often call it Christmas crack. First, you want to preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit and line up some baking sheets with some foil. Make sure that the sheets have raised edges. I am making a triple batch here, so keep in mind as you're watching, I'm making a lot. For one batch, you will need 1 tube of saltines, 1 cup of butter, 1 cup of brown sugar, and around 12 ounces of chocolate chips, but measure with your heart on that one. Create 1 layer of saltines on the foil, and then melt the butter on the stove with the brown sugar. I like to kind of wait until most of the butter has melted before adding the brown sugar. Let the mixture boil for 3 minutes, and then remove from the heat and pour on top of the saltines. Spread the mixture to the sides of the pan and bake this in the oven for 5 minutes. Be careful, these pans will be hot even though they haven't been in the oven yet. After 5 minutes, the mixture should have a bunch of little bubbles and should look something like this. Take the tray out of the oven and sprinkle on your chocolate chips. Usually I would just use semi-sweet chocolate chips, but going with the rock theme, I wanted to give this toffee a marbled look, so I added a lot of white chocolate chips on one of the trays. For the second tray, I really should have melted the little white chocolate I used separate and then drizzled it on at the end because it really didn't show up and it just didn't have the final look I was going for. But it was still delicious, and that is really all that matters. Once you are done spreading out the chocolate, place the trays in your freezer for at least a few hours, and then they will be ready to break apart. Store in the freezer until you're ready to eat. Next, we are going to make some chocolate Rice Krispie treats. On the stove, I melted 6 tablespoons of butter and added about 16 ounces of marshmallows and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. It had been years since I made Rice Krispies from scratch, and I thought the mixture would have melted down a little bit quicker, so I got impatient and transferred the mixture to a bowl and microwaved it until it became a more workable texture. Then I let Juan mix as I poured in 6 cups of chocolate Rice Krispies cereal and some white chocolate chips towards the end. Once the mixture was well incorporated, I buttered my hands and made 1.5-inch balls. Buttering your hands actually helps keep the mixture from sticking to you, so it helps you out a lot. Then I gave the balls a Shelly limestone finish. Let me show you how it's done. I used some melting chocolate and followed the instructions on the container to melt it to a smooth consistency. Then I used a popsicle stick to hold the Rice Krispie ball in place as I covered it in the melting chocolate. If you wanted, you could use a fork here, really anything would work. As I got to the end of the container, I added in some of my white chocolate chips and some creamer, and I melted it and mixed until smooth. If you find that it's kind of like lumpy, consider adding some more chocolate chips in. White chocolate, I guess, tempers at a different temperature, and so if it's really lumpy, you actually need to cool the chocolate down. It sounds weird, but it worked for me. This concoction didn't firm up the same as the melting chocolates and had to be kind of painted on the Rice Krispies, but it still did its job. Since I ran out of the pink chocolate towards the end, I decided just to leave some of the Rice Krispie treats alone in case anyone didn't want the extra calories. Then I put the treats in the fridge to harden, and once firm, placed them in a bowl and sprayed them with this edible silver paint. This container was a little too small to cover all of the treats, but I tried to get the most out of it and even spun the treats in the bowl to pick up all of the color that got on the bowl and not on the desserts. These were very sweet, but a big hit with my sweet tooth family. Next, we are going to make sugar crystals. You are going to need 2 cups of water, 6 cups of sugar, food coloring, popsicle sticks or string, something to suspend your stick or string, cups that can withstand heat, and flavoring if you choose. I did not use flavoring in this case. I first prepared the cups by tying 2 popsicle sticks together in the shape of a cross with a little rubber band. You want the stick to be suspended in the cup at least a ½ inch from the bottom. Later, I noticed I needed to add more stability to these horizontal stick concoctions, so I added 2 more popsicle sticks on either side, again attaching with rubber bands. You will see my creation in a bit. Once all of the cups are prepared, you want to boil the sugar and water over medium-high heat until all of the sugar has dissolved and looks something like this. Then you want to pour the mixture in the cup and choose your coloring and/or flavor. I made these crystals about 2 weeks before the party because my sister's family was over for dinner, and I decided to let her kids participate in personalizing their birthday favor by choosing the color of their crystals. I would suggest adding at least 4 drops of food coloring to each cup, as the final result is a very soft and subtle color. Here you can see how I made the popsicle stick crosses more stable. Without the additional sticks, the vertical stick would kind of sway in the sugar mixture and not stand up straight. Make sure you cover the tops of the cups to avoid dust getting on the crystals. The next day, crystals had already begun to form, and after a week, they had formed completely. In my experience, crystals formed on the popsicle stick as well as the sides and bottom of the cup and the top of the mixture, so they were pretty much everywhere. Getting all of these crystals out of the cup was a challenge. I first used a knife to crack the top layer and pull out the stick. Then I had to scrape the sides of the cup and scoop out as many crystals as I could. Getting the bottom layer out was the hardest. I tried soaking the cup in hot water to loosen the sugar kind of from the outside in, but that method didn't really help me. So I filled the cup with a little bit of water and microwaved it for 10 to 30 seconds, and then used a knife to wedge in between the sugar and the cup, and eventually the bottom popped out. I placed the crystal popsicle stick along with the stray crystals in a little baggie to give out the day of the party. I also want to note that I labeled each kid's stick with their initial, so it would be easy to tell which crystals belonged to which kid. Next, I modified Jolly Ranchers to look like agate or geodes to fit the rock party theme. I first began by creating the number 2 by laying out 7 Jolly Ranchers in the shape of a 2 on a cookie sheet covered in parchment paper. I also crushed 2 Jolly Ranchers of a different color for additional decoration. I baked the candy at 300 degrees Fahrenheit for about 4 to 6 minutes until it had fully melted. The cook time slightly varied based on the flavor of the candy, which is something that surprised me. Once out of the oven, you have to work a little fast. I placed the crushed candy on top of the number 2 and used a toothpick to clean up the edges of the number. Next, I crushed the rest of the Jolly Ranchers and arranged them in circles. I tried to have at least 2 colors per decorative candy to give it a little bit more dimension. Again, I used a toothpick to kind of clean up the edges and fill in the holes while the candy was still hot and moldable. I do want to note that these candies were still very sticky after they had hardened up, so you want to make sure you store them with parchment paper separating each piece, and you might want to display them by hanging them with a string or some other method so that they don't stick to each other or the plate that they're on. Unfortunately, that's what I did, and it was just really hard to enjoy them the day of the party. Finally, I want to give you a little preview of me preparing the cake and the frosting. Here, I am having to make an extra batch of cake because I realized that my first batch just wasn't going to be resulting in a cake as tall as I wanted. I really should have just made a double batch from the start, so you live and you learn. I did this days before the party and even froze my cakes after covering them in a simple syrup. This step could have been done weeks in advance if you want. I also prepared the filling and the buttercream frosting days in advance too, so that my life would be easier as the party approached. The recipe and instructions for this delicious cake will be in a future video, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. I would love for you to stick around, and please don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up, and I will catch you in the next one. To the end of the video. If already, my name is Emily from Limabean Living. Welcome, we are so happy to have you. We post videos every Monday and Friday on a variety of content: lifestyle, cooking, cleaning, military life, DIYs, encouraging mathematical development in children, and so much more. Thank you so much again for watching, and until next time.